Hi, I'm Marc, and on this channel I talk about Brexit and UK politics. Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair shaped Great Britain with their political courage. Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer can't keep up today. It was a year ago that there was a kind of collective sigh of relief in British politics. Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, promising stability and, yes, competence. He quickly consigned the wild years of Boris Johnson and the short-lived Liz Truss to the dustbin of history. And finally there was peace. Was there? Well, after a year in office, Sunak has failed to inspire confidence in the Conservatives, who have been in power since 2010. The young Prime Minister is a workhorse and prefers to tackle all problems at once. But the more eagerly he acts, the less convincing he seems to be. There's one election defeat after another, and the Tory gap to the Labour opposition in all surveys remains gigantic. And the closer the next election gets, probably in the end of 2024 somehow, the more nervous the Conservatives become. And so can Labour leader Keir Starmer sit back and relax until the keys to 10 Downing Street fall into his lap. Do you think? Well, anyone who follows the political debate in Great Britain cannot help but find a void in both the Conservatives and Labour, where ideas should actually be sprouting ahead of an election. Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer have both campaigned primarily to clean up their own party's past. In 2019, the two best populists in their respective parties, Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, faced each other. It was exciting, but ultimately pointless. In 2024, there is a threat of an election campaign between the two best technocrats. And this won't even be exciting this time. It is significant that Rishi Sunak likes to refer to Margaret Thatcher and Keir Starmer likes to refer to Tony Blair. Both are looking for glory that could rub off on them. The Conservative Prime Minister from 1979 to 1990 and the Labour Prime Minister from 1997 to 2007 not only left their mark on their parties, they also stood for courageous political projects that changed people's lives immediately, but only had their full impact later and thus shaped the country for at least a generation. With Thatcher, it was the generalization of private home ownership. With Blair, it was the generalization of higher education. Margaret Thatcher offered social tenants the opportunity to buy their social housing, and millions did so, making home ownership accessible to low earners for the first time. And Tony Blair massively expanded the higher education system. Millions of young people flocked to the universities, and for the first time higher education became normal even beyond the educational elite. Until the 1960s, only a minority of Brits lived in their own homes, and under Thatcher, the proportion rose sharply, reaching over 70% by 2005. And when it comes to higher education, the change is even more spectacular. In 1990, Great Britain had fewer than 80,000 university graduates per year. Today, it is more than 4 times as many, with 38% of school leavers now going on to higher education, compared to 14% in the Thatcher era. Both projects also contain political calculations. Thatcher wanted a majority society of owners voting right, and Blair wanted a majority society of educated people voting left. But both projects would not have worked politically if they had not already met society's expectations of progress here. They fit the British ideal of advancement through one's own efforts, for which the state sets good conditions only. Democratization of access to home ownership and higher education means social participation, social inclusion, better opportunities for advancement, and secure living conditions. And the downsides became apparent later. Under Thatcher, the privatization of social housing stock was accompanied by a halt to social housing construction, which continues to this day. At Blair, the expansion of higher education went hand in hand with an end to free education in favor of tuition fees. Those who study go into debt, and the more university graduates there are, the fewer their career prospects are. The spread of home ownership came to a halt with the financial crisis, and that of higher education currently appears to be ending. But anyone who grows up in Great Britain today grows up into a two-thirds society in which most doors seem closed to more and more people. The fact that most services are becoming worse and more expensive exacerbates the feeling of crisis. The Thatcher and Blair generations have limited ability to pass on their achievements to their children now. Private home ownership has become an apparent luxury good. A university degree has become an apparent junk commodity, and the state stands helplessly by. The solution certainly does not consist in the irredeemable promise of a return to previous privileges, while at the same time maintaining the achievements since then. That means the cheap social housing and free university places for everyone, as the left demands still. But neither Rishi Sunak nor Keir Starmer have any convincing ideas of their own. They also barely address the unfinished business: affordable elder care and childcare that is accessible to all, security for the oldest and youngest, along with home ownership and good education, would be the third building block of a promise of social advancement that lasts longer than just one generation. Sunak and Starmer are honest and serious reformers, but their relationship to politics is similar to that of a mechanic to a broken car. They suggest how to make it drivable, but not where to go, and their politics are limited to the means, not the end, and they feed on the past, but Britain needs the future. It is important and essential, but it's not enough by far. And because of the British electoral system, it's very unlikely that any other party than these two will come into government in the foreseeable future. The British first-past-the-post election system is a type of a plurality voting system in which the candidate with the most votes in each constituency is elected. And first-past-the-post is used to elect members of the House of Commons, that's the lower house of the UK Parliament. To understand how first-past-the-post works, it is helpful to understand what a constituency is, of course. A constituency is a geographical area that is represented by a single member of Parliament. And at the moment, there are 650 constituencies in the UK. On election day, voters in each constituency receive a ballot paper with a list of candidates. Voters can cast their vote for any one candidate on this ballot paper. The candidate with the most votes in each constituency is then elected. First-past-the-post is a very simple electoral system to understand, but it has a number of advantages and disadvantages. First-past-the-post is a very simple and easy to understand system, as I said. And first-past-the-post tends to produce clear majorities in Parliament, which can make it easier for governments to form and implement policies. And first-past-the-post makes it easier for voters to hold their elected representatives accountable. Voters know who their MP is and can easily contact them if they have any concerns. But first-past-the-post leads to wasted votes as well, and this happens when a candidate wins with a minority of the votes cast. And first-past-the-post leads to disproportionate representation, and this happens when a party wins a majority of seats in Parliament with a minority of the overall vote. It was the same in 2019. First-past-the-post also can discourage people from voting, especially if they feel that their vote is unlikely to make a difference. In the 2019 UK general election, the Conservative Party won a majority of seats in Parliament with just 43.6% of the overall vote. And this means that over half of the voters who cast their ballots saw their candidate lose. And there is a growing movement in the UK for electoral reform. Many people believe that the first-past-the-post system is outdated and undemocratic. They argue that a more proportional system would be fairer and would give more voters a voice in Parliament. The UK government has held a number of referendums on electoral reform in the past, but none of them have been successful. However, the pressure for electoral reform is likely to continue to grow in the years to come. And if you want to know something else, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.